Hello, and welcome to the Milk of the Matter podcast. We're a production brought to you by the Breastfeeding and Child Nutrition Foundation and the Ministry of Education. My name is Dr. Alison Bernard, and I'm the Executive Director of the organization and the host today. And today I'm joined by Mrs. Cara Jean-Baptiste. Hi, Cara.
Hi.
Cara is a mom of two, and she's a wife, and she is the Communications and Public Relations Officer of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Incorporated. Thanks, Cara, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just get into it. Right, so we were having a bit of a conversation off camera, and it was exciting. I want people to hear the stuff that we have going on right now. I mean, one of the first things that I want us to talk about is your experience with going back to work after maternity leave. Was that as hellish as I know or heard it can be?
Oh, yes. Yes, it was. I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, so I went back to work April 3rd after having my second son, Jax.
Right.
And my colleague was telling me yesterday, this is July, I went back since April, and she said, you looked very out of it. Like,
Right.
we could see that you were not okay. And I really wasn't okay. I wanted to be at home with Chance, my firstborn. I was at home with him for the full year.
Wow.
So
that's fantastic.
yes. And that was always because of COVID as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I got the opportunity to be at home with him for the full year. So I knew what I was missing when I had to go back to work so quickly in April.
Right. Okay.
So it was hard. I was not doing well. I thought I was doing well. I thought I was carrying it well. I was not.
Right.
And it was harder than you would expect it to be.
I have to be honest with you. I did have a similar experience in terms of, so I would have had my first child in the UK, and they get the 10 months to 1 year maternity leave, fantastic and everything. But even after all that time, she was breastfed exclusively, still breastfeeding. It was rough. So I can only imagine what it is like for moms who don't get as much time as we would have done. They're probably telling us that we're probably thinking, oh, they're real spoiled. But they get a whole year. I get a little scrunty 6
3
weeks
months sometimes.
or 3 months, and they're complaining. But it is hard no matter how you slice it. We would love to be able to take our children to work with us.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Some days.
Some days we like to take our children to work with us. So yeah, I understand. That must have been really hard for you. And you didn't, I mean, when you were walking from April to July, when you were walking around the office, you felt you were coping.
Yeah, I felt like I was doing well. I felt like on the outside I was like, but my colleague was like, no, you were like, so I thought I was doing well. So I was doing my job.
Yeah.
But clearly.
Clearly. But at any point, did you have anyone who, because, if they're seeing that, did anyone say anything? Did anyone say, Cara, maybe you need some help?
Yeah. My boss, she's brilliant. Love her to pieces. She is very in tune with our emotions, everyone on our team.
Yeah.
So she could tell that something was off. And a month ago, she pulled me into her office to talk about it. But I was embarrassed that she even realized that something was wrong, because I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do and separate home from work and, doing my job. It was very embarrassing to be pulled up, even though she did not mean it in an embarrassing way.
Yeah.
I still felt a little embarrassed.
You felt called out.
Yeah.
Because you thought you were coping.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So in situations where mothers are not coping in the office setting, what do you think, what systems should be in place to help mothers in that situation?
I think there should be the opportunity for them to utilize therapy sessions. So probably sourcing the therapist and paying for it, but allowing it to be done in an anonymous way. I'm not sure how that would be done. But so the mother don't feel like, this is because mental health, as much as we would love there to not be a stigma around it, there is still a stigma. We're getting better.
Progress is being
We're
made.
getting better.
Definitely.
But there's still a little bit of education that needs to be done around mental health.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of embarrassment around it.
Yeah.
So just in a way that we could, I don't know, anonymously, just to allow for the mothers to access it.
That makes sense to me, and it would be great if, you know, in every single office in Barbados, if a mother, not just a mother, obviously we're talking about all employees, once they need that assistance, it could be provided to them. We said it here first, perhaps not first, but we said it here. Your back to work scenario after maternity leave was challenging, but it looks as though you've come out on the other side of it. What were some of the challenges in terms of before you came back out to work? What were some of the challenges that you faced in terms of breastfeeding? Let's go back a little bit. Or did you have any challenges, or was it really easy?
No. I had challenges. I did have challenges.
Right.
So with my first, I wasn't able to breastfeed because he couldn't latch. And so I had to exclusively pump. And I was preparing myself mentally to exclusively pump this time around. And it turns out the second one latched.
Right.
And along with that came the pain from him learning to latch. But I feel like after 3 weeks of that constant pain, it got a lot better. I had to YouTube a bit how to maneuver my boob into his mouth. But after that, it was great.
Okay.
Breastfeeding was good.
Did you know that there were support systems out there that you could access? Did you know about the BCNF is what I'm asking. Did you know about us?
I will be honest and say no.
That is the usual response.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's fine, we're working on it.
There was a nurse there. So on the first day.
This is in hospital?
In the hospital.
Right, okay.
She was a little rough though. She was just like, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's like moving my boob and pushing my boob into Jax's mouth. And I was like, you could be a little gentler. But she was very rough. Like, this is what you have to do, kind of thing. But yeah, so I think I went to YouTube because I didn't want that. So if I knew that there was an avenue that wasn't so harsh, because I understand that they have a lot to do at the hospital, but if I knew about BCNF, I would have gone that route instead of YouTube.
We're not making any comparisons, but we are quite gentle.
I would hope so.
We are a gentle bunch, but also I think a lot of the issue around breastfeeding in the hospital is, as you said, time limited, staff, in terms of staffing, resource poor. So everybody's rushed and in a hurry. But, one of the most vulnerable populations in the hospital is the mom who's just had a baby. And that's actually where most of your empathy and compassion needs to kind of really come out. But unfortunately, sometimes it does not. I have had stories from moms who said that they had fantastic experiences, with the nurses in hospital, both our public and our private hospital. They both have negative and positive experiences. So, I think we do, as a population, maybe need to work on our empathy, soft skills a little bit more as a group, not just the hospital setting. So the issue with breastfeeding was quite challenging, but you managed to pull through. Did you have any other supports, like aunties, mummies, who were able to assist you?
Not really. And this isn't to say that it wasn't there if I wanted it to be there.
Right.
I'm pretty sure if I reached out to my mom, she would have assisted me in whatever way. But I didn't think I needed to. My husband, he was on top of everything when it came to my support.
In what way?
Because Jax latched, I decided I wasn't going to pump. And he said, no, you're going to still have to up your supply. And I read that earlier, the earlier you pump and breastfeed. Like that would signal to your body to make more milk so you could start overproducing. So that when you get to work, you could start building your stash kind of thing.
He really did
So
his
he
research.
went, yes,
Whoa.
like he did that. He would make sure that I always had water. I wanted snacks kind of,
Yeah.
but I have the tendency to overindulge.
Yeah.
So he would clear out the pantry to make sure that I only had the healthier option of
Seriously?
snacks.
He really,
Yes.
he
Yes.
upped his game,
He
boy.
upped his game. And then when Jax, there was one night that Jax like latched on really hard and I screamed out and he like got up, was like, "What's wrong? Were you okay?"
Oh, he was sleeping and he
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
You know, they
Our
always
men-
sleep
our
through
men
everything.
do not usually get up.
So he got up, he looked and was like, "Oh, wait, he's latched above by your nipple. Like, you're going to have to take
I'm
him
going to
off."
pass out right now.
Right? So I was like, "How you mean take him off? Do you not, like, this is very hard. He's latched on hard." And so he did like this
Right.
to massage Jax's
and
cheeks
got him off.
and got him off. And then he said, "Okay, so this is going to be weird, but this is what I saw the lady do." And he like put my boob by Jax's nose and
and brought it down. Yeah.
and he
And that
latched
worked.
great. And then he stayed up with me all night until I was finished.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And I'm not saying it in a way to say that men don't ever step up.
They do.
They
could.
do. My husband did. But sometimes it's the ways that they step up that you're not expecting them to. You know, classically, women are the nurturers, men are the providers. So when a man steps up in this really, really intensely nurturing kind of way, you're like,
I wanted to marry him all over again. Just being honest. I wanted to marry him again because I was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
and just down to the little things of him having the water there for me.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. He made it not sound as romantic. He was like, "I remember it from chance. You were always thirsty and I always had to get out of bed and go and get you water." So I was like, "We ain't doing that again this year. You're going to always have your drink there." So.
And I mentioned my husband, and I always tell this story because it's really important. Maybe I told it in another podcast as well, but remembering that my husband reminded me when at 1 o'clock in the morning I said, "I am done. X marks the box. I'm finished." And he said, "No, but you said you wanted to." He reminded me because when you're in that vulnerable, "I'm done now" phase, you don't hear anything, you don't receive anything. But he got through and he said, "No, but you said you wanted to. Just give it a few more hours. But it's gonna be better when the sun comes up, and you'll be okay." And I was. So I always say I kind of attribute the fact that I breastfed for nearly 3 years in total to my husband, because otherwise I was finished.
I understand completely because I wanted to give up as well. I said, "No, I feel like he's on my boob all the time." He said, "No, you said a year.
Wow.
It's been 3 months."
It's amazing how men can remind you, your husband's can remind you of the things that you said you pretend you've forgotten or you've actually forgotten. That's fantastic. So Cara, you would have told us about your breastfeeding journey, the challenges that you were able to overcome, the help that your fantastic husband gave you. And then, the challenges that you had when you went back into work. But the question I have for you is, do you think that maternity leave, what the provisions, the protections that we have in terms of employment policy for mothers and breastfeeding mothers is enough? Do you think the maternity leave that we have is enough? What about paternity leave? What do you think?
Definitely paternity leave could be a little longer.
We have paternity leave?
My husband had it
in his office.
3 days. 3 days.
That's okay.
That is very short. What help is he going to give me? Well, I'm in the hospital the 2 days out of the 3.
So out of the 3 days he gets, you're literally not even at home.
So it was like he had to take his vacation on top of it.
Right.
And I said, paternity leave, y'all need to do something about that because that doesn't do anything that doesn't help the mom, nothing. And maternity leave, I think I'm a strong advocate for a year.
Right.
Yeah. I think we could go for a year.
Do you think that's likely though? I mean, there are these conversations about the fact that government won't have enough money. There's issues around NIS and so on. Do you think that that is likely in terms of getting any extension of maternity leave?
I think a year is probably pushing it.
Right. Okay.
But I still, if we could get a year, I would say a year. But I think we could advocate for 6 months,
A minimum.
a minimum of
Yeah.
6 months, because there are some moms, especially in my case, who have not fully healed by the 3 month mark.
Yeah.
Some moms might not have fully healed in the 6 week mark.
Yeah.
I know for sure I was not healed in the 6 week mark. And my friend had to go back to work when she gave birth to her son, and 6 weeks was all she had.
Right. Yeah.
And she had to go back to work. I was wobbling at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's not even about spending time with your baby while, yes, we want to spend all the time in the world with our kid. But it's really about healing physically,
The recovery.
the recovery process,
Yeah.
and mentally as well.
There's a lot of discussion now about postpartum care and the fact that the postpartum period can be up to 2 years sometimes. I remember for a year and a half after I had my first child, my hips felt as though they were out of joint. I was constantly in pain. I was still hobbling around even after a year and a half. I would have been considered an elderly primate at that stage.
Oh, dear.
Yes. Very insulting. Very insulting, but that's what I was considered in my 30s. And so I don't know if that had something to do with it. But even in that instance, even outside of that instance, the body has just expanded, relaxed, just opened itself up to be able to deliver this baby. And then in 6 weeks, you're expected to all that to kind of go back together. It's impossible.
It really is.
It's impossible. I think that I agree with you. I think more needs to be done, not just with maternity leave and the social protections, but even in terms of acknowledging that mums' bodies are not yet ready for work. In the 3 months that we have, maybe not even in the 6 months that they might even consider giving us. So yeah, I do agree with you totally there. The fact that they're not going to give us maternity leave, I am suggesting something else to you. What do you think about breastfeeding workplace policy? Do you know much about it?
I don't know much about it.
Well, so what they talk about is making sure that mums have an environment that allows them to be able to pump their milk when they go back to work. A lot of mums don't actually have any space. Some mums I had, when I did some research on it, a lot of the mums, they just gave up on the breastfeeding because there was no place for them to pump when they went back to work. Some of them actually stopped, and then they would, because obviously they're still producing milk, they'd go into the bathroom and they lean over the sink and just, release the milk into
Not the
sink.
liquid gold.
The liquid gold, girl. Liquid gold. Release it into the sink because there was nowhere, they couldn't store it because there was no clean place to pump. They had to use a bathroom, and no one wants to pump.
No.
No one wants to pump in a toilet.
No.
Yeah, so having a clean, safe, hygienic space to be able to pump, having paid breaks so that you can pump your milk off, at least 2 15-minute to 20-minute breaks. Or maybe some flexible working hours so that maybe
that works. That
maybe
helps a
for
lot.
the first few weeks you don't come in every day or you come in half day or something, some kind of variation on that. So, I mean, what do you think that would be, in lieu of extending maternity leave? Do you think that's something that moms would, because your face like, nope, long maternity leave, that's what I am demanding.
So I'm standing for.
I'm standing for that.
But no, I think we could get behind the flexible working hours as well.
Yeah.
At my workplace, I do have, they created a space for me to pump. So
Is that a fixed space now? Is that always going to be there for any moms who come? Oh, that's brilliant.
So it's also the sick bay. So I have two places that I am allowed to pump.
Okay.
And I don't always go downstairs to the sick bay. I will stay upstairs. There's a room in our PR department that I can use.
Okay.
So I do have that space at work. So I've never struggled with having to pump. I mean, even sometimes my boss will allow me to leave the meetings and
go and
then come back after the 30 minutes.
We see, and it's so inequitable because a lot of mums. So there are a lot of mums who either work shift. They're in the whether it's in the hotels or the restaurants, and they don't have that kind of flexibility. They don't have the options to, They don't have the space.
Mhm.
There's no time off for them to do anything. They
Yeah,
have to
and I
just be
can't
working.
imagine not having that because that's extremely important,
Yeah,
especially in the first year. No matter how long you decide you need to breastfeed, you need to have that space so you could really. It's uncomfortable. It's not
yeah.
even just of feeding
Your
your
baby,
child. It's literally
you're still producing
yes,
milk.
you are. You're uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So you're not able to think straight sometimes if you're so engorged. It's
yeah.
literally like I think that should be a basic human right.
Right. Actually, I think you are absolutely right, because you are expecting, your expectation is that these moms are going to suffer through the pain
Mhm.
of having engorged breasts full of milk that they can't do anything with because a space hasn't been provided for them.
Mhm.
So what I say to moms who I meet who really, really want to continue breastfeeding, because the fact is, if you don't continue pumping your milk off after you get back to work, your milk supply is going to
Yeah,
drop,
drop.
and
And
then you're
that's a whole other.
a whole other issue.
Mhm.
So, if you really, really want to, then I tell them, before you go back to work, talk to your HR. If you have an HR or the
Mhm.
manager or someone, and say, listen, this is really important to me.
Mhm.
This is going to make me more productive. This is going to make, I'm going to be healthier. My baby's going to be healthier. I'm going to be missing less time off work because we're not going to be sick so often.
Mhm.
And this is going to actually be better for you and your company if you allow me to do this.
Mhm.
And after you finish convincing them of that, suggest to them, I think we can put the space here.
Mhm.
I just need a socket for my electric pump, or she might not need that. She's
A
using a hand.
sink, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, a sink. Someplace keep it clean.
Mhm.
If you're in that kind of space and you have that kind of manager, maybe they'll provide you a fridge, because there's some employees who they don't want to know that breast milk is in the same fridge with their food.
Well, I feel sorry for my employees. They all know. My colleagues all know.
But that's the thing. But
Mhm.
to my mind,
Mhm.
unless you think the milk is somehow going to jump from the bottle into your lunch, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the issue is. But some people really have an issue with it.
Mm.
So
They
maybe
just need to be educated, I guess.
education. That's it exactly. Or
Mhm.
or the moms can just take a cooler bag
Oh, I put mine in the
in
a
the
bag
in the
only
cooler
because
bag.
I felt a little. I don't know if I was embarrassed, but it
Right.
was like,
Okay.
oh no, that's
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, but it can stay in there for 24 hours if you pack it with enough ice. 24 hours and you're good. So there are ways around. Things, but I think at the end of it, it's about. I mean, there's some people that say that the employer should be responsible for it all. I don't know
Mm,
if I agree. I kind of feel it should be legislated.
I
What's your
think so
thing?
as well, because not everybody's gonna follow that rule. So
No,
if it is legislated, then they're kind of mandated to do
mandated.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it should be legislated. Like,
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that unless it is, we're gonna see what we have now in terms of things like paternity leave, even though it's a thing and some people are doing it in their organizations and others aren't.
mhm.
So I think it really does need to be law.
And
Um,
more than 3 days
oh,
for
for sure.
paternity.
I'm thinking at least a month.
Yes, that is perfect.
At least a month paternity,
Mhm.
and by then, or this shared parental leave as well,
Oh.
where, for example, if they decide to give extend parental leave to
Mhm.
6 months,
Mhm.
then you could take 3 months, and he could take 3 months, or you could take 4 and 2, and so you could share it, because
That is a better option.
some moms, depending on their work,
Mhm.
don't want to take. They don't feel like they want to take all that time. It might have an impact on their upward mobility in their
Mhm.
in their
Mhm.
jobs. So they
Mhm.
want to take less time, and then daddy can.
Take them. Mhm.
She would continue to pump, and daddy would just get the milk and feed the baby. So there are lots of ways around it.
Mhm.
I don't actually think it's as complicated as
We make it.
perhaps it is made. In your scenario,
Mhm.
can you think of any barriers, anything that would have made you stop breastfeeding? So not the pain, and we know that was a potential barrier, but
Mhm.
anything external that might have made it hard for you to continue breastfeeding
Um,
in terms of social, cultural issues, perhaps.
the kind of person that I am, I don't breastfeed in public
Mhm.
because I'm hyper aware of men and their opinions.
Mm.
So I don't even put myself in that situation for me to have to react in any way.
Okay.
But I think that would be a major barrier if I had no place to feed my son and I had to feed him in public and the judgmental stares that people would get.
That you think that would impact you a lot, having,
Yeah.
and I think it impacts a lot of mothers as well, actually, in terms of. But I honestly, Cara, I never knew that was a thing. Hair.
Yep. Here it is.
I honestly did
I
not
found
know
out
that.
on Twitter one day when
What do you
everybody
mean?
was just going through. So there was this video that was trending probably last year. This lady, she was breastfeeding her son.
This is here in Barbados?
No.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
the reactions
Yeah, to
were
it.
from the Bayesian
Beijing.
people.
Yeah.
So their reactions to that video, I was like, oh,
Right. Okay.
so
That told a story.
so maybe I should not in public.
Right.
Kind of make me uncomfortable if that's your reaction to
Yeah.
that.
That's
So,
something that didn't even happen here.
here,
But the thing is that when I left, because I left Barbados in 2001, and I don't, it was not a conscious thought in my mind anything about breastfeeding. Of course not, because I live in my best life. I go to England. I'm going to, go and get my degree, my postgraduate education. Blah, blah. I was raring to go. I was not thinking about breastfeeding, but it's only after I had my daughter when I was up there. And I remember I was walking down a street in Red Hill because I lived in Surrey. And this kid could not have been more than 13 or 14 years old. I was breastfeeding my daughter, and I had a muslin over my shoulder, as you do. And she was screaming. I'm feeding her. The muslin kind of flew off, but I'm still covered. He couldn't see anything. And he's like, put it away, would you? Face crunched up. And now someone asked me recently whether or not that, because I think I told this story on the last podcast, and the guest asked me whether or not that had anything to do with race. And I said, possible. But it really affected me. Like, because how many years later I'm telling the story, it really affected me, and I was mad. And I looked back at him to say something, and I said, no, that's probably not a good idea. I don't know what his response would be. And then I'm here by myself because my husband had gone into the mall to go and do something, and I was on my own. I said, forget it. But when I came home, when I was there, I said to my colleagues, oh, that would never happen. Because I told all my nursing friends at work, that happened, and, how could it happen, and blah, blah. And when I got home, because I said it would never happen in Barbados, and I got home, and I was getting the side eye. They're talking about bombastic side eye, right? I'm like, proper bombastic. What's she doing? And I was like, what do you mean? Everybody in Barbados. I remember, but before I left, boobs everywhere, uncovered, covered. It didn't matter. That's what I perceived. But actually, I don't think it has been like that for many, many years. But I remember thinking that I remember seeing boobs in Barbados, and now for sure, definitely not. When I came back home in 2011, or was it 12, I noticed the difference. I was not seeing a lot of breastfeeding. And then when I did my research, one mom said that she got in a van and baby started screaming, she was breastfeeding, and this man totally berated her and embarrassed her in the van for breastfeeding her baby.
I believe it.
And I never thought I would hear that in Barbados. What happened?
I think because they sexualize boobs.
But the boobs have always been sexualized. More?
Yeah.
Is that possible? Okay.
Yeah, and then I don't think they understand that it's literally just feeding your kid. My husband was saying that he didn't understand until he saw it, and he said he can understand why men are uncomfortable, but it's just because they didn't know or they don't understand what breastfeeding is, even though it's something that to us is so simple. But to them, it's just like,
Cara,
what's going on there?
Really, they don't know what breastfeeding is. Have we gone so far away from what is natural? And I'm sorry, I'm using the word normal.
We have.
Every other species in the world, mammals, feed their young with their teeth. So I do not understand. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to talk about what the differences are. And I think one of our next jobs is to get a guy on this sofa to talk about
You sure? That's a great idea.
what, what are the issues, what are the barriers in his mind towards seeing a woman just breastfeeding. Because the fact is that the primary function of a breast is to feed the young. Primary function. And I'm in my own life, my only function. I can't think of another reason why my breast exists at all after having had children. So, I think we need to get a man on the couch.
Yeah, I definitely tune in for that.
Yes, thank you very much. And now, so we've kind of spoken about this, in terms of your husband and his involvement. And you've also shared some positive experiences with us. Is there anything more you want to share in terms of how he was able to help you? I know he fed you.
Kept me
Kept you
hydrated.
hydrated. Did he clothe you as well? Did he have to?
Yes, actually.
He did.
Yes. So
I
it
need to
was
meet your
very
husband.
hard. You will. It was very hard for me. I was in a lot of pain. You know the pain that you are in. So I went through, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say pads on TV. I don't know why there's a censor thing in my brain.
I think it's fine.
But I went through like packs upon packs upon packs of pads. And then there were times where he had to like go out and get them. He knew the brand, he knew how many I liked, he knew the color I liked.
Right.
He had to help me get down off the bed sometimes, walk me to the bathroom, bathe me, help me like pull my stuff up and dress me. So he's been a very, very strong support system in my life, in my breastfeeding journey, in my motherhood journey. And I don't know how, honestly, I would have, and I hope he doesn't see this part because he's going to bring it up all the time. But he has been like the best part of my journey and in helping me. Yes, he's been a significant help.
Wow.
And I literally don't know how I would have done it without him. I don't know how I would have gotten this far without his support.
Oh, that is a fantastic thing that you said.
Yeah.
He's going to see this and
I'm going to skip this part.
No, this is the rest of your marriage. You're going to hear about this.
Yeah, I'm going to skip it though.
That's
I'm going to like fast forward so he doesn't see it.
But that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Do you think that there's anything that you would want to do differently in your, in terms of the entire experience that you had over 2 children? Like with your first, it didn't go as you had wanted it to. Is there anything that you would have done differently if you now looking back?
No, because I was still able to provide my breast milk for my first, even though he wasn't able to latch. Although going through it, I felt like the worst mother ever, that I wasn't able to feed him from my body. I felt like, you're the only mother that can't get this done. And hopefully this is like a basic human function. You can't do it. You're a terrible mother. Weird things to say. But I think pumping helped ease my mind, and I wouldn't change it because at the end of the day, he still was able to get a breast milk. And then I wasn't able to supply because his appetite increased around the 10-month mark.
Okay.
And he really, really just wanted a whole set of breast milk, and I could not supply it. And I had to supplement with formula. And I felt bad because I wanted to go the full year of him just having breast milk, no formula. But at the end of the day, a fed baby is the best baby.
And at the end of the day, you would have done your best. And I think that's what we tend to forget when we go through this. There are lots of, there are lots of reasons why babies may not go straight onto the breast. It might be from our side, whether it's psychological, all that messaging is hard, you're not going to be able to do it, your body can't do it. And when you have that messaging, sometimes it's self-perpetuating, right? And then the other thing is sometimes your body actually can't do it. Those are very, very rare. Less than 5% of women cannot actually breastfeed.
Oh, wow.
It's a very small percentage, but it still exists. And I think and I always say this to the moms that I consult with, just be really graceful with yourself. And I'm not saying make excuses and be mamsy pamsy and, but if you know you are trying your best
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing the best that you can within the resources that you have, just be graceful. Just be
Yeah.
give yourself some grace and some leeway to just be okay. My
And to
child is
learn.
and to learn. And my child is alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the best that I can until I can do better.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And I think that's sometimes and I always tell mums, and it's a fact, we literally seem to, as soon as we have a child, we have this automatic guilt switch that gets
That
turned
just,
on.
I don't know where that
It
comes
just
from.
turns on. Maybe it's something that we mother passes on to mother passes on to mother.
Mm.
It's generational, I don't know. But we have this automatic guilt. We're not enough, we didn't do it well enough. And how are we harming our child? So
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to find a way to get rid of that. It literally serves very little purpose.
Yeah, it is.
Really
Yeah, I
serves very
agree.
little purpose. Maybe it helps us, maybe it pushes some mothers to try a bit harder, but the
Mm-hmm.
guilt can be really self-destructive.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah, so so it doesn't sound as though there's a lot that you would have done differently. You were reasonably happy with um, your experience. What about within society?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from we talked about social protections and so on. Is there anything else that you'd like to see change as it relates to breastfeeding and what we see out in the world in Barbados?
Yeah, I would like for it to be normalized a little more. I know we're advocating for it, and people are doing their best to say, hey, this is normal. This is something that a woman does with her child. It's not inappropriate. It's not something that is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
It's feeding a hungry baby.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the social constraints around the way breastfeeding is viewed should be improved a little more. Because sometimes I don't feel comfortable feeding my son in public. I'll go to the car first.
Yeah.
Not the bathroom, but the car. And just think that I will have to get up and leave
Mm-hmm.
from where I'm at to go to the car to feed my baby. It's
So,
just wild.
so do you mean, like, for example, space is created for moms to be able
That
to?
would be perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect if we could have a space for them, for
Yeah.
mothers to feed. I was traveling a few weeks ago. I think it was the beginning of May. And so I wasn't traveling with my son. My son stayed home with our grandparents, their grandparents. And I still had to pump.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to, when I left the airport here, I pumped in a bathroom and I dumped the milk.
Mm.
And no
They
one wants to
wouldn't.
dump their milk.
They wouldn't
There
let
was
you
no
take it.
space. No. Mm-mm,
You couldn't take that on the.
mm-mm.
Ooh.
I didn't
We
mind dumping it because I pumped it in the bathroom.
right. Yeah. So you don't
So
really.
I wasn't
So
gonna
right. And
take it.
and you know that I think we've talked about this before. What would
Mhm.
be brilliant is one of those.
They had that. They had
Oh, they
that in
have it.
Miami.
Right.
Yeah, so
The pods.
that pod,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I really wish Barbados had that in. I mean, the airport is a
Yeah.
great space to have it. I know
Yeah.
maintenance is an issue,
Yeah.
but the airport is a great place.
And I think it would save so much for Barbados if we actually had something like that, like, first world, and they clearly breastfeeding is a priority for these people, I think it would speak volumes if we had a space like that. And also it would say to the mums in Barbados, this is important, you need to be doing this more. And I think that's a messaging that mums need to get more, that because a lot of the mums that I spoke to or I speak to, they often say that they feel like an afterthought. They feel like sidelined, like they've come back to work after having had a baby, having a baby, wonderful thing. Oh, congratulations, you've done such a great job. And then like just business as usual.
Yeah.
Nothing different, just get on and do the job as normal. But it's totally different.
Yeah, you're not the same person you were when you came back.
Everything's changed.
Yeah.
And you were just expected to go back in and fit back in with everybody else. One mom was saying that when she got some time, her boss gave her a few minutes to pump her milk off and so on. She got some serious shade thrown at her, like, oh my gosh, how does she get time to pump milk? She must be getting extra concessions, and
Mhm.
she just skiving and all this kind of stuff. Like, she was wasting time,
Wow.
and that she should not have been given the time to pump her milk off.
Mhm.
And I'm afraid this is not just men, this is women as well. Men and women are voicing these things to these moms,
Mhm.
and they feel marginalized by that. So a lot of moms are like, well, if it's gonna be this hard, I stopping. One, I don't have a space to pump my milk off,
Mhm.
and I get in this pushback from my colleagues,
Mhm.
and that's why I think the policy is so important, because if management says, so top level is saying, this is what we doing, people. This is why it's important. It doesn't just impact this mom and this baby, it benefits you as well. Because you know what? She can miss less work for you, right?
Mhm.
And it just increases her productivity. She's a better worker
Yeah.
because she is, she's been given this time to do what she really wants to do, which is feed her baby optimally.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's really rough for moms who go back to work.
It is.
And one mom I know had to make a decision between her baby's health and breastfeeding, because she was in a job where it was a lot of toxic chemicals,
Mhm. Oh, there. Yeah.
and they didn't seem to want to give her the time
Mm.
to because she would have to go into another department if she wanted to continue breastfeeding. And they said, well, because of the Shaw Act, you have to make sure that your employees are, well protected and safe and so on. But they said, well, sorry, cut you off at 6 months. You gotta make a decision. You want your job, basically, or you gonna continue breastfeeding. Up to you. There was no, so she had to decide between a job and her child's health. And I don't think
Oh,
that just
a little unfair.
seems a lot unfair.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a long way to go
Very, very long.
in terms of making sure that moms are enabled to do what is their reproductive prerogative.
Support system is very key too, though,
Yes.
and we often overlook it, and we think that it's not as important as we think it is, but it is something that can push you far.
Mhm.
It
In either direction, though, because if you
true,
have a
especially in
support,
the case of the lady, if she didn't have that pushback from her colleagues.
absolutely, and then also family. So
Hmm.
if you have family who are like, well, you don't just give the baby the formula,
Formula.
it's starving
Hmm.
the child.
Hmm.
It can be really hard for moms to kind of stick stay the course and stick with it, because
Yeah.
breastfeeding by itself is so hard, Cara, as you know.
Hmm.
Alone it's hard, and then if you have someone talking in your ear, you just stop doing it, you start it. Easy for moms to.
Yeah, and we're very vulnerable
Hmm.
after you give birth, even like fresh after giving birth. Like your hormones all over the place.
Yep.
So, yeah.
What advice do you have for Barbadian mothers who are, they haven't had their baby yet, they're pregnant right now, they're going to
Mhm.
have their baby? What advice do you have for them?
Um, my advice would be a support system. I know it's very underrated and it's not thought about very often. Um, because my best friend, she would come over. She doesn't have any kids, so she doesn't know what I'm going through, but she was just present. She just
Mm.
came, she sat down with her wine and uh,
Like that.
I mean, I couldn't drink any, but
Best
she was just
friends,
there
boy.
sitting, listening to me cry,
Hmm.
holding Jack so I could go use the bathroom, take a nice long uninterrupted shower.
Mm.
Those little tiny
Things.
things are extremely important, and we don't see it because they seem so small,
Yeah.
but massive when you think of the grand scheme of things.
I remember times where I would sit on the toilet with the baby. That's the only way it was happening.
Hmm.
If I needed to go, she was coming with
It's
me.
real.
Yeah. I remember when you mentioned your husband bathing you.
Hmm.
I remember when I was really pregnant with my daughter, like
Hmm.
proper huge.
You,
And I was like,
I
there
can't
is
do
no,
it.
I wasn't reaching those regions, right? So my
Hmm.
husband was like, and especially when I went into labor, I was
Hmm.
in so much pain. He's like, okay, I'll do it. And he washed everything. And it's those things that and I think that's underrated as well.
Hmm.
Those moments bring you so close to someone, closer than you ever planned to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it binds you and it connects you in a way that you never expect. And you're
Yeah.
so grateful for it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when years down the road, you remember those moments, man. So I just wanted to mention that. Thanks, hubby. Yeah. So I also wanted to touch back on, because you said something previously about the pumping.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. Pumping can really help you in terms of going back into work,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to be really careful with pumping. If you are like, everybody worries about undersupply, but there's
Yeah.
some moms, oh gosh, they are oversuppliers. They're like milk squirting everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, baby's
Wow.
eye, baby's mouth. I wasn't one of those. I was a lower supply mom.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are also pumping on top of, and when you first had baby, you really don't know which way you going.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start pumping too early, so on top of that, your milk is going to come in whoosh, and you're going to have tons of milk, and then you've been pumping on
Mm.
top of that. It can lead to things like engorgement and mastitis. So, what you were saying at some point,
Mm-hmm.
listen to your body.
Absolutely.
Listen to your body. Know what your body is trying to tell you. If
Mm-hmm.
literally within a 24 hours or 40 hours, you're like Pamela Anderson,
Yeah. Don't
don't
pump.
pump. Not a good time. Your
Mm-hmm.
breasts are trying to adapt to what your baby's demand is
Mm-hmm.
and what you're going to supply. So
Mm-hmm.
pumping is not a great thing to do at that point. I would always say you're going back to work at 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
or even if it's 6 weeks, 2 weeks before you go back to work, you can start to pump. I would not try doing the pumping less than a month unless there was unless baby wasn't latching,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously if baby and latching, you got to get the milk off, you
Yeah.
got to pump.
Yeah.
But if everything is going well, less than a month, no need.
Mm-hmm.
After a month, you can start getting your stores up and getting yourself ready for work. So it's hard. Of course, the BCNF is around. If you need any advice about going back to work and breastfeeding, we have all the information. You just call us 828-8934. Just sticking that in there. Um, so I mean, we've had a really great conversation here. We
Yes, we
talked
have.
from A to Z, breastfeeding, going back to work,
Mm-hmm.
pumping, hubbies. It's been a really great conversation, Cara.
It has. It has.
I don't know if there's anything else you needed to add or wanted to add.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I
It
I
was
think
great.
I think that I agree. I think that that's the end of the show. Thank you, viewers, for tuning into this episode of The Milk of Matter. This episode was sponsored by Nubian Naturals by Kellyanne. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram. I'm your host, Dr. Alison Bernard. See you next time.